Hey, what is up YouTube? Kolst here with the third card review for Voyage to the Sunken City, the new Hearthstone expansion coming out in like 2 weeks, I believe. But we're going to be talking about cards from Priest, Rogue, Shaman, and Warrior in this one. And again, I have on my Twitter a giveaway, and we're going to have a giveaway here on YouTube as well in a future video, and a giveaway on Twitch as well. That'll be for one standard bundle on each of those three platforms, so definitely make sure to check those out. But with that, anyway, let's get right into these reviews. So the first card we have here is Asheron Ritual. This is a 4 mana, silence a minion and summon a copy of it. Put a Sunken Ritual on the bottom of your deck. So this is very similar to, you know, Psyche Split, except instead of buffing the minion, you silence it, which is theoretically a downside, but it could be an upside, right? What's gonna be really nice about that is like sometimes you would Psyche Split your opponent's minion because you just didn't have a better play and they play a big thing and you're like, okay, I want one of those, and maybe you can then remove it on the same turn, whatever. But just in the general case, this will be much better than normal for using on your opponent's minion. If it's a big minion that has a death rattle, you know, that you don't mind silencing anyway, and then you don't get the effect, but at least you get stats from it, right? So overall, pretty good card, because you can also, if you just have a minion with a bunch of stats, you can use it on your own guy as well. And then this one, the card you get here is silence a minion, summon 2 copies of it. So I mean, clearly if you can get a big minion to stick and then you copy it and then you somehow get this off the bottom of your deck and then you copy it 2 more times, I mean, you win the game, right? So I think this is going to be a pretty darn powerful card here. Just very useful for a lot of different things. So seems very nice. I'll definitely be picking this a lot. Talking about cards we're going to be picking a lot if we see it at least because it's an epic. So hopefully we won't be seeing it a lot. This is Whirlpool. 9 mana nature spell. Destroy all minions and copies of them wherever they are. So wherever they are is very interesting, because that means if it's in your deck or in your hand, it will get destroyed. Or if it's in your opponent's deck or your opponent's hand, they will also get destroyed. So ideally, you'd be destroying a whole bunch of class cards on your opponent's side, and they might have copies of them in your hand, and then, you know, you can get rid of a whole bunch of things. However, I actually think this might be a good example of a card that's more powerful, potentially in Constructed, because, you know, in Constructed, people like to put 2 copies of everything in their deck, right? In Arena, you might just not, you know, you have a lot of one-ofs, so this effect might not be that oppressive. And then 9 mana to destroy all minions is not that good. It has the downside as well, you know, again, like if your opponent has a big minion on the board that you happen to have in your hand, that's bad for you, right? So overall, I think this is actually, as far as Arena is concerned, one of the weaker mass board clears that Priest has gotten, or really any class even has or has gotten. But, you know, it'll have its moments, and sometimes, you know, you'll just take a mass board clear because you want it, right? So definitely a good card, just not the best mass board clear that Priest has ever had access to. Let's move on to the legendary here for Priest, which is Priestess Valish, or yeah, I don't know. 0 mana 1/1, Battlecry, refresh an empty mana crystal for each spell you've cast this turn. It is a wisp, but it can refresh a bunch of mana. So the thing is, as far as Arena is concerned, is that you're just not going to have that many, you know, you're not going to be casting that many spells in one turn very often. So it'd be nice if you get like, you know, a couple mana crystals, but most of the time this probably just doesn't do enough for you to really want it, especially in the legendary slot. There's a lot of legendaries that are going to be a lot more consistently better than this. It's important again that, I mean, you're refreshing mana, right? It's not going to let you, you're not going to get to play your 8-drop on turn 6, right? You just get 2 mana back at the end, and then what are you going to do in Arena? Play a 2-drop? Who cares, right? It's nice, I guess, but, you know, it's just not what you're looking for from a legendary typically. But, I mean, if you have a lot of spells, you know, maybe it'll do something. I just wouldn't have super high expectations for it in Arena. Obviously, in Constructed, I mean, it's going to do crazy things. Then let's move on to the next card, which is Handmaiden. 3 mana 3/2, Battlecry. If you cast 3 spells while holding this, draw 3 cards. So obviously a 3 mana 3/2, it's a Naga as well, is not really good enough for a card, right? But I mean, Priest is one of those classes, you know, a lot of these cards have this 3 spells effect, and some classes in Arena get more spells than others. And Priest is one of those classes doesn't always actually, sometimes Priest doesn't have a lot of spells, and that's when Priest is usually pretty bad. But Priest tends to get a lot of spells, or at least the good Priest decks tend to have a lot of spells. So you can affect to do this, and Priest lately at least has had actually a value problem in Arena where they tend to lose because they actually just get outvalued by everybody. And if you pull this off once, 3 card draws in Priest, and you are not getting outvalued anymore. You're gonna be fine in that department. So this is a very, even though it's not a good enough card, just off its stats, this is an effect that is really, really good for Priest, I think, because again, like, just that's what they want a lot of the time. Although it does make you lose fatigue, but usually that doesn't matter in Arena. But yeah, I think this is an upside. I'm definitely not saying you want to take this all the time, but if you have a lot of spells and you need a little bit of value, this is definitely something you're going to want to consider. Probably on average, not the best still, but it's definitely, you're going to want to take this sometimes. It's going to depend on your deck. Well, now let's move on to Rogue. So with Rogue here, we have 3 cards to review, 2 of them being legendaries. The first one here is Pirate Admiral Hook Tusk. 8 mana, 8/8 Battle Cry. If you've summoned 8 other pirates this game, plunder the enemy. What is plunder the enemy, you ask? Well, there are 3 options here. First one is take 5 cards from your opponent's deck. So basically you get like a free, not even sprint, it's 1 more card than sprint. You get just infinite amount of value, and you steal them from your deck, which means you win fatigue. Not that that would really matter most of the time in Arena. Another option is take 2 cards from your opponent's hand, which is not quite as much value as this. Well, I say that, but you get to remove 2 cards from them. So -2 to them, but +2 to you. And a lot of times, you know, your opponent might be holding their big drops that they just haven't gotten to play yet. So you can steal their Ysera or something, right? So this might actually be a higher option than this sometimes. Higher value option. And the third one is take their ship, which is take control of your opponent's highest attack minion. So mind control, basically. All very, very powerful effects. However, having said that, this is a condition. You have to have summoned 8 other pirates this game. That is nearly impossible in Arena. We don't know what the rotation is, but there is a card called, I forget what it is exactly, something Flybooter, which is 1 mana, 1/1. Put 2 1/1 pirates into your hand. If that card is in rotation, it is very possible you could pull this off all of a sudden, right? Otherwise, it's basically completely impossible. But if that card is in, it might happen. So you have to keep an eye out for this, and especially if Flybooter's in, I think. And there are going to be other pirates, so we'll see. And is this Summon? This is Summon, so it will come. There will be other things as well that it'll work with. So the first example is this one, Usher on Vessel, a 5 mana spell. Summon 2 3/3 pirates with stealth. Put a Sunken Vessel on the bottom of your deck. So a Sunken Vessel is casts when drawn. Summon 2 3/3 pirates with stealth. So if you can play this, 2 3/3 stealths for 5 mana is not crazy good, but that's honestly pretty good. And I mean, if you can dredge this, then you get two more, and then all of a sudden, I mean, you don't have to pay mana for this. It's cast when drawn. So all of a sudden, that's disgusting to pay 5 mana for 4 3/3s. Wow, very, very strong. So overall, it's an epic spell. You won't see it that much, but yeah, definitely a good card. If you have dredge effects, this goes from good to pretty crazy good. But most of the time, you may or may not. So if you don't, it's only good, but yeah, it could be crazy. Talking about crazy though, we have Krakatoa here, which is a legendary minion with the Colossal tag. Colossal +2, 6 mana, 6/5 beast. Your Krakatoa claws have +2 attack. So these Krakatoa's claws are 2/1 rushes. Death Rattle, equip a 2/1 claw. So that is a weapon that goes to your hero. And because these have +2 attack, and this also works on your face? Jeez. Wait, I thought this was a Power Creep Twin Tyrant. This is better than Twin Tyrant. What the hell? So you get 8 damage from 2 minions with Rush that you don't have to pay life for if you hit something. And then you can use the first claw equipped, deal 4 damage to something. You could just send it face. And then you use the second one of these. And then you get another one that you get to use the next turn, and it'll probably go down to 2 attack because this might die, but it might not die, and then it's still 4 attack. This is like 6, this is better than I thought it was. This is 6/5 for like 12 guaranteed damage, and possibly, and very likely 14 and even 16. Wow. This is just, oh my god, this is like, oh my, Dude, this is almost like Raid Boss Onyxia. I was comparing this card. I was going to compare this card to Twin Tyrant. This is almost Raid Boss Onyxia level. It's 6 mana, by the way. Like, this is like 2/3 of Raid Boss Onyxia, or even like 3/4 of Raid Boss for 6 mana. Oh my god. This is... And because it's 6 mana, this is probably a better card than Raid Boss, actually. Jesus. Help. Yeah, that is... This is probably the best Colossal, I think. Because this is I knew it was really good, but geez, it's a lot better than I even thought it was. Reading it this time. Yeah, you will pick that card every time you see it. Moving on. Let's go to Shaman. So the first card we have here is Asheron Scroll. 1 mana spell, discover a fire, frost, or nature spell. So this should mean you get one of each of the 3 options. Put a Sunken Scroll on the bottom of your deck. And the Sunken Scroll is add a fire, frost, and nature spell from your class to your hand. So basically another discover, but instead of having to choose one, you get all 3 of them. So that's a pretty good upside, a lot of value if you can get that out of the bottom of your deck. And if the game somehow gets to fatigue and you haven't gotten it yet, then that'd be nice, I guess. And for this one, I haven't... So discovering a spell for 1 mana, that's usually kind of worth it in Arena, you know, because there's some things you can really get. It's going to depend on what you can actually get with it. I haven't looked, we don't know what the rotation is, so I can't really tell you. Like, whenever they have these kind of things where you're discovering very specific types, what if there is only there? It's very possible there might only be like, you know, there might be only like 1, 2, or 3 like fire or frost spells, so you might be guaranteed to get something really nuts, right? We'll have to see with that again when we know what the actual card pool is. But overall, probably not nuts, but I mean, if you have a really good shot at something, it might be very good, right? After like the whole deep run engineer, discover a mech thing, I always have a little caution whenever I see any of these kind of cards that could potentially, you know, have really elevated odds to pull something nuts. Now let's move on to the next card here, which is Wrathspine Enchanter. This is 7 mana, 5/4, Epic Naga. Battle Cry, cast a copy of a Fire, Frost, and Nature spell in your hand. Targets chosen randomly. I don't know why they keep making these cards with targets chosen randomly. They're just kind of, yeah, I don't know. But, so ideally, you know, there's a lot of spells that you might not necessarily want to cast at a certain time in Shaman, or you might not want to cast them if they have a chance of targeting your own guys. But I mean, depending on what's in rotation, you know, there happens to be one very large nature spell that might be kind of unfair if you happen to pull it with this. So it is gonna very much depend on what's available, and you might not even have to draft it theoretically, right? You could discover it off of this. So we'll have to see with this one. It's a very expensive card that, I mean, you need to have very specific things to make it work, so it's probably not going to be a good card in Arena on average, but I mean, you can do, you know, very absurd things with it. The potential is there. With that, let's move on to the next card in Shaman, which is Radiance of Ashura, which is a 3 mana 3/4 elemental fire spell damage +2, so only for fire spells. Also, your nature spells cost 1 less, and also after you cast a frost spell, gain 3 armor. So there's one card, which this card already got nerfed in Wild, which is Unstable Evolution, which happened to be a nature spell. So you would have gotten infinite chains with this, and they decided that they didn't want that in the game. So they changed that card to be an echo, so it can't be discounted below 1. Because they did that because of Snip Snap, I believe, because people were making 0 mana Snip Snaps and breaking the game. So anyway, what are you going to say? It does require you to have like very specific types of cards again, and these aren't like necessarily game-breaking effects, so as far as Arena is concerned, because you're just not going to be able to abuse this super hard. But I mean, it's a 3 mana 3/4 at the very least, right? So it's definitely good, right? And you'll probably be able to get some value out of it, but you're probably just not going to pop off super hard with this card in Arena. I'd be interested to see what people can do with it in Standard, though, I will say. Let's move on to the next card here, which is Schooling. 1 mana spell, add 3 1/1 Piranha Swarmers to your hand. So I never actually figured this, but I assume that Piranha Swarmers, when they summon, they don't buff themselves, right? That's just something I've always assumed. If they do buff themselves, these cards are a lot better, and I think they are. But I'm assuming they don't, so the way you could use this, you could just play this on turn 1, and that'd be really nice, but really you would want to play, you know, you want to play them together. But whenever you play them, if you ramp it, you can do it for 3 mana, but otherwise you can just surprise someone for 4 mana with this, and then in that case, it'd be 4 mana, deal 6, because you can deal 1, 2, and 3. Which is, you know, I mean, that's Fireball, right? You can't go face, but that's a lot of damage, right? So that seems like just a very good thing. And again, like if you have it in your opening hand, you can just use your first mana, which you probably would have not used anyway. And then you just have 3 mana deal 6, which is amazing, right? So very nice and flexible card. So gonna be very good. Definitely a very, very strong card for Arena. Let's move on to Coral Keeper. This is a 5 mana 3/4 Naga. Battlecry. Summon a 3/3 elemental for each spell school you've cast this game. My voice is dying because, as I mentioned, I went to a concert last night and I've been streaming for 6 hours. As the second video I'm recording today, and it is not my last. And I'm doing a co-op stream after this. Oh boy. But yeah, so if you can get 1 elemental, this is honestly worth it, right? And Shaman is one of those classes that gets spells. You get a decent number of spells usually, and by turn 5, this doesn't have to be like you've cast in your hand. This is cast while it's in game. So generally speaking, these kind of cards aren't going to be good in Arena, but I mean, you really only need 1, and you're very likely to, even on curve, you're pretty likely to have more than 1 spell cast already, and you could just do this. So I mean, and potentially even in Arena, you might get a board full of minions off of this. Probably not on curve, but you know, maybe on turn 7, turn 8. So this seems like honestly a very powerful card even for Arena. Even though these types of cards don't tend to be super nice. So I think it's very good. Move on to the last card in the Shaman category here, which is Bioluminescence. This is a 3 mana nature spell. Give your minions spell damage +1. There's obviously in standard a lot of crazy things you could do, or even in wild maybe some crazy things you could do, OTK type stuff with this. But overall in Arena, like, there's definitely some potential, but this is mostly going to be a win harder card. Like, you would probably want to have board already. And then, I mean, if you have 3 minions on board that you stuck, and then you have this and a lightning storm, I mean, it's a kind of win harder combo card basically. And these types of cards just aren't very consistent in Arena. You can definitely pop off with them, but it's probably not something you want to draft super often. You may want to look to discover it, and you know, I mean, if you have a bunch of tokens or something, Piranha Swarmers or something, or even a more efficient way to generate tokens, you know, there's potential, but it's just not going to be a consistent card that you probably shouldn't draft super often. Now let's move on to the last class in this video, which we'll be talking about, which is Warrior. 4 cards to review here. The first one is Asheron Trident. Asheron Trident is yet another 3 mana 3/2 weapon for Warrior with Death Rattle. Put a Sunken Trident on the bottom of your deck. One thing that's a little annoying about that, if you want the card on the bottom of your deck, is that this is a 2 health weapon and it's a Death Rattle. So you actually have to, you know, most of the time you would actually have to swing this twice, and you might not want to swing it a second time immediately, right? Your opponent's going to see you have a 3 damage weapon, might not give you a perfect swing for it. So this might be a significant delay for putting this on the bottom of your deck. And the weapon you get at the bottom is, again, another 3/2 weapon, where after your hero attacks, deal 2 damage to all enemy minions. Not enemies, just enemy minions. So this is a very nice weapon on the bottom of your deck, but again, it might be a while before you see it, even if you have a way to pull it up. We'll say, like, overall, by the time you would actually see it, 2 damage AoE is maybe not super impressive, but I mean, it's still, it's a very good card, obviously, to be able to cast like 2 super swipes. So definitely a pickable card. I mean, a 3/2 weapon is pretty pickable, especially now. Like, Warrior doesn't even get weapons right now, so you'll pick this a decent amount. It'll depend on how many, if there are better weapons to get, and again, if you can actually dredge this out of your deck. But definitely one thing we know is that'll definitely be a pickable card for sure. Now let's move on to the next card here, which is Lady Ashvane, a 5 mana 5/5 legendary, by the way, with Battlecry. Give all weapons in your hand, deck, and battlefield +1/+1. So you could actually buff both of the tridents theoretically. Overall, I mean, a 5 mana 5/4 that only buffed the weapon you had equipped used to be a legendary. Okay, like, and it was an okay legendary. It wasn't an amazing legendary, but in like Warrior, you would take it sometimes. So overall, it's going to depend again, like how many weapons you actually have, if Warrior's actually getting weapons or not. But if you can just hit like anything with this, it's pretty good. This is not going to be like the crazy legendaries like a lot of the Colossals are, or just other things like Ysera. I don't think it's going to be at that power level, but fair chances is a very strong legendary for Warrior most of the time. Obviously much weaker if you don't draft any weapons at all, which sometimes happens, even if Warrior gets weapons. But, you know, most of the time it's going to be pretty good and consistent, I think. Talking about pretty good and consistent, let's move on to the next card here. Trench Stalker, 9 mana, 8/9, Epic Beast, Battlecry, attack 3 different random enemies. So the fact that this is an 8/9, It's a very interesting stat line. It's pretty critical because that means it'll survive a hit from an 8/8. So, you know, it won't just trade into an 8/8. It'll at least hack something else, right? The fact that it's 3 random enemies, I assume it's in random order as well. It must be. Means that, you know, potentially you might have these situations where you play this to kill 2 minions on the board, and then you might just be on RNG where hopefully it hits face once, because it says enemies. It can go face, very important thing to note. But you might be on RNG for whether or not it actually gets the face hit. Obviously, if your opponent only has 2 minions that don't kill this, you'll get that guaranteed 8 face damage, so it'll be very good for that. But otherwise, you might be stuck on RNG here. And you also, if your opponent has like an 8/8 and 3 other minions, or even 2 other minions, and they have a face, obviously, it may or may not kill the 8/8, and that might be a thing. So, I don't know, this card might be a little frustrating for its RNG aspect, but it's definitely going to be a pickable card. It's an epic, so you won't see it super often, hopefully, assuming they fix the epic bug. But definitely going to be a playable card. Any of these late game cards, you really need them to have some kind of initiative at this point, and this thing does do that, so it will be a card you see. I don't think it's going to be super nuts, but it'll be, you know, definitely a card you would draft. Next one we have here is the Fires of Zin Oshery, which is a 2-mana fire spell. Replace your deck with minions that cost 5 or more. They cost 5. So I spent a decent amount of time thinking about this. We're going to have to, like, really, we have to know what the rotation is to really do all the math and stuff. We need to know what the core set, we don't even know what the core set is right now. So it's really hard to judge a card like this. But I looked at the card pool right now a bit. And one thing you'll notice, and I'm assuming this won't change too much, is that most cards that are 5+ mana cost either 5 or 6. It's like 60 something %, I think it was. So most of the time, you're not going to get something nuts about this immediately. So there's like 2 conditions, right? There's condition 1 is, can you just play this on turn 2? And will it be good enough to do that? Because you'll skip turn 2, but then, you know, you get more chances to have a nuts high roll for your turn 5. And I think it might be good enough because you're going to have, eventually, you'll have like 3 pulls, I guess, at that point. And you're probably going to get something good. And it's just minions that cost 5 or more. You can get class cards. So I think it'll probably be able to swing the tempo back in its favor pretty quickly if you play it on turn 2. And the other question for a card like this is, can you just play it in the late game? You know, just hope that you get lucky very early on. And the thing is, as I said, like, because most cards are not super expensive, you probably won't get a nuts high roll super fast, I think. So if you play in the late game as a YOLO, like, it might work, but it's most of the time not going to work. So you'd have to be able to hold on for a while. So I think the way you'd actually want to use this card is playing it as early as possible. Because one thing to note is, like, if you play this on turn 6 or something, and you're drawing cards that cost 5, you can only play 1 of them per turn. You can't play like 2 of them. So like your turn 8, turn 9 might look very awkward is what I'm trying to say after you've played a card like this. So I think you'd really be fishing for the high roll. So it's really hard. I don't know. You'd have to do like analysis, really deep analysis on this to really see how good this is. I think it'll be good, but not great. I will say people tend to underestimate these cards. Like, I think it'll function rather similar to Seraphine Fleet Runner, except it just won't be quite as nuts as Seraphine Fleet Runner because it doesn't have the tempo swing immediately after playing it. But, you know, I'm saying not as good as Seraphine, where Seraphine is literally the best card in the game right now. But I do think this card will be pretty good, but just probably not crazy good on average. Well, that's a perfect time to say, what do you guys think? Make sure to leave a comment in the comment section below if you have thoughts on this card or any of the other cards here. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to check out more content related to Hearthstone and Hearthstone Arena, and also keep your eyes out on the YouTube giveaway coming soon and the Twitter giveaways on Twitter as well. And there'll be a Twitch giveaway as well. So yeah, thanks a lot again for hanging out. We see you guys in the next one.